Kia ora koutou, and welcome to our webinar for parents who are looking to understand their daughter's PAT results. Just for a few moments while we wait for people to join, please find the link in the chat where you can join a Mentimeter to share what you may remember about standardised assessments like PATs from your own time at school. If you're joining from a computer, you'll be able to see the live results as others enter their answers.
We already have answers. So it is live.
Great. Okay, so we'll start with our introductions. My name is Amanda Kitiona. I'm the Head of Learning Enrichment at QMC. I'm a trained teacher specialising in learning support, which I've done for about 20 years now. Currently, I'm working towards my registration as a professional cognitive assessor. And I'm joined by Trix Marrero this evening.
Hello, everyone. So I am the Gifted and Talented Coordinator here at QMC. I'm actually an engineer by trade, but a teacher by choice. I'm currently finishing a postgraduate diploma in specialist teaching in gifted ed. And if you see me not looking at the camera, it's because I will be monitoring the chat while we're talking.
Okay, thanks, Trix. This is the first webinar we've ever done, so wish us luck. We'll do our best to give you a smooth experience, but if any technology issues were to happen, like your screen freezes or you lose sounds, please just drop out of the call and then rejoin via the link you used to first join us. As Trix said, she will be monitoring the chat and the Q&As while we run the presentation, and we at the end will answer your questions. So please go ahead and post the questions as we go. So this evening we will briefly cover what PATs are and explain why we use them. Along the way, we'll show you where you can find your daughter's results and outline what these results show. We will also explain how we interpret PAT results, as well as how we use them here in learning enrichment and more widely at QMC. So what are PATs? Progressive achievement tests were first developed by the New Zealand Council for Educational Research, that's NZCER for short, to assess student achievement and track student progress against the New Zealand curriculum. You may have seen on your children's primary school reports that they perhaps below, at or above the national standards. We're going to try and make sense of that for you this evening. PATs have been around for a long time. You might remember them from when you were at school. I certainly remember them myself. That they have undergone periodic revisions. They're fully digitalised now, and these multiple choice tests are mostly 40 to 50 minutes long. Voice reading is enabled in the maths, listening and science PATs now as well. Here at QMC in the middle school, we use PATs to assess mathematics, listening comprehension, reading vocabulary, and science thinking with evidence. The results show the level of skill and knowledge a children is working at and can be used to track student, class, and whole year group progress over time. But one thing we must keep in mind is that tests are just a snapshot, giving us a result that reflects student performance at a point in time. There are a range of variables and situational factors that can impact these results. Computer glitches, student motivation, wellbeing issues, and there's too many to list. But we really do need to look at these results in context. At QMC, we conduct PATs in term 1 each year. The results give us an overview of where students are sitting in relation to the curriculum. We will talk more about the types of scores that PATs give us on the next slide. The results enable us to identify students who may be at risk of not achieving at the expected level, as well as students who may be exceeding expectations and may require extension in specific areas of their learning. Trix and I analyse these results thoroughly. Yeah. We look at patterns of strengths and weaknesses for each student, as well as areas of strength and weakness across year groups, whole cohorts, to help identify target areas for the teaching programs that we run here. So PAT results are presented in several forms. Firstly, we have the raw scores. These reflect the number of questions that were answered correctly. There are roughly 30 questions in a PAT test. But the most useful scores are the scale scores. These scores are conversions of the raw test scores onto an equal interval scale, which aligns broadly with the levels 1 to 5 of the New Zealand curriculum. Each PAT test domain has its own scale, which runs through every test in that subject, allowing us to track student achievement over time. We can use scale scores to measure student position in line with the curriculum and to calculate progress against average progress benchmarks. An important point mentioning here is that scale scores are not percentages. They sometimes actually go over 100, but we'll talk more about that shortly. Scale scores at each year level are divided into 9 bands of achievement. They're called Stay-Nines, and they're useful for grouping students. We can see the normal distribution in the bell curve here. Most students, when compared with their own year level, achieve around Stay-Nines 4 to 6. Stay-Nines 7, 8 and 9 represent comparatively high achievement for a year group, while Stay-Nines 1 to 3 indicate comparatively low achievement. These broad levels of achievement can be used for tracking progress of groups, but not for tracking the progress of individuals. They're too broad for that, as you'll see shortly. So, how we interpret PAT results. We've got an example here that shows how a student's scale score can be compared from one year to the next to determine growth. We can see with fictional Maggie's PAT results that in 2023, her maths scale score of 43 fell at Stay-9 or within Stay-9 4. Now remember from the normal distribution graph on the previous slide that the average student sits between Stay-Nines 4 and 6. The maths scale here on the far right shows us that the national average scale scores for year 7 range from 42 through to 60. At year 8, an average scale score would be between 46 and 65, also sitting within Stay-Nines 4 to 6. Notice that our scale score on the far right here goes up to 105. The smaller numbers here beside each group's Stay-9 band represent the percentiles, which relate to the distribution of scores across the year group. Again, we'll cover this a little bit more in another slide with tricks. So Maggie's results in 2024 show her remaining at Stay-Nine 4, but we can see that her scale score has increased by 5 points. According to NZCER's progress benchmarks for the Maths PAT, which is here at the bottom of the slide now, 4.5 points is the expected average increase in scale score from year 7 to 8. So we can conclude that Maggie has met the expected rate of progress during her 1 year of learning. Because she's sitting at the lower end of the average band, just within the expected curriculum level for her year group, her maths teacher may see Maggie as a student in need of additional in-class support. And she might take a deeper look into Maggie's PAT results to see where specific areas of strength and weakness might be that could be targeted by the teacher in the classroom. So to determine where Maggie's gaps may be, her teacher can log on to the NZCER teacher dashboard. Unfortunately, parents can't see this, but the teachers have a good look at these and look at where the strengths and weaknesses might be. We can see across the 5 strands that in each of them, Maggie's answered correctly the questions that are shaded black, but incorrectly the ones that aren't shaded. We can see here that there appear to be gaps in Maggie's number knowledge. She only got 2 out of 7 correct. But she has answered correctly 7 out of 10 in the number strategies questions. We can see there may be gaps in geometry and measurement, But we do need more than a single test to gain a picture of a learner's capability and needs. So this is just one piece of information a teacher would use. What we do here is we compile all of our students' results onto a spreadsheet. And we can see here Maggie's results. We can see all of her results across the 5 different PAT tests, and her reading comprehension and vocabulary are of particular concern. She will be flagged by us, the Learning Enrichment team, for further investigation. We can also see how Maggie's results compare with other fictional students in her year group. Her results stand out, but hers are not the only results that will catch our eye. When we analyse these results, we can filter the results by scale score. The specific tests, we can see here they've all been filtered by the mathematics stay-9 with the top ones, the highest stay-9s at the top. We can scan along the rows to see how individuals have achieved, and we can identify students who may have inconsistencies, such as really high scores in some areas and an unexpected low score. Beverly's an example of this. She's scored a high 72.5 scale score for maths, a high 60.7 for science, a 73.4 for reading comprehension, but down here in her listening comp, we've got her sitting at a stay 9.4. So that score's comparatively lower than the others, but given the range of variables that might impact a listening result, such as noise, fatigue, technical glitches, attention span, auditory processing, just to name a few, we do need to gather more information before deciding on any follow-up. Back to Maggie. Where is she? There. So we can look further on the NZCER website. You can see here Maggie's progress over 2 years against the national averages. Maggie's results are this green band here. The national averages are the blue band. So we can see that she is sitting, particularly for reading comprehension, significantly below the national average. We can also have a look at her reading vocab, similarly below the national average band, her listening comprehension, which is just on, and her science thinking with evidence. We can speculate about potential reasons for Maggie's low PAT results, but we really need more information than this. We would look at previous school reports, we'd look at her MYP class grades in previous years, we'd survey her current teachers, and after also consulting with her parents, we would get Maggie in for a series of screening tests that would inform for us what the next steps might be. I'm going to hand over to Trix for a minute before I go any further on that one. Over to you, Trix.
Thank you. So now, excuse me, we're going to take a moment to look at the distribution scores nationally, and we're going to compare them with QMC, end of the day is what we're interested in. So at each level, the national average is going to be determined the 5 star 9 score, which you can see me pointing in the slide. And the rest of the scores are going to be calculated and assigned accordingly. So the percentages can fit this normal distribution that we showed you before. So that's always going to be the case, regardless year 7 or year 10, standard 5 is always the national average. And to fit this normal distribution nationally, 54% of student scores are fitting here between the average band, which are the standards 4 to 6. Now, when we look at QMC, our average standard generally is 6, which means that our average band, which is going to be then shifted upwards between standards 5 to 7. Because that what it means is that a student which is going to be sitting at the average in QMC may actually be scoring higher than what expected at her year level, and vice versa. A student that may be performing comparatively lower in QMC because of that higher shifted band may be actually performing what's normal, perfectly average for the nationals. You can see here in the center of the column that percentile ranked range. And what that is telling you, as we mentioned earlier, it's not the same as a scale score. A percentile is just a position of a student performance of percentage within the distribution, and the scale scores are numerical, and they can change between 0 and up to 120, depending on the subject. So to make a bit more sense of it, if we look at our results for mathematics, then these are collected in term 1. As we mentioned, we test all our students in year 7 to 10. Our spread, QMC spread, it's seen here in this little distribution of students. And for our results, the mathematic results, we can see that just 4% of students combined between year 7 and 10 are sitting here in the Stanines 1, 2, and 3. And when we compare with nationally, almost a quarter of students, 24% sitting here, which are these numbers in brackets, it's quite a significant difference. Same when we look here toward the middle, 50% of QMC students achieved in Stanines 4 to 6, which is roughly the same as the national average, but the bulk of students are here in Stanines 5, 6, and then up to 7. Actually, 46% of our students sit here in what is considered above average band, Stanines 7, 8, and 9. And if we look at the very far right in the highest Stanine, we can actually see this bar that is telling us that we've got 13% of our students compared with 4% of the students in the Stanine 9. So 4% here is telling you that a student that links in there, it's actually performing higher than 96% of the students nationally. And this significant number of students here in the upper Stanines is what it will make a student here, Stanines 4 or 5, appear below average. But you will see in the coming slides and in the one that we just discussed, it's important to note that these students are within the national average. This one, it's the same set of results, but we just broken it into year levels. You can see here in our bottom axis, our year levels, and in the y-axis, it's our scale score, which is the one that Amanda discussed that takes into account the difficulty of the questions. These blue boxes that we see here are the QMC average band, and the gray boxes here on the lap in them are the boxes of the national average band. So if we look at year 7, for example, the national band here, it's always remember Stanine 5, it's actually 49.1. But if we compare it with ours, QMCs, the average score is 59.8, which actually is a Stanine 7 nationally, as I'm pointing here. And it's because that the average year 7 Stanine for us is 7, QMC student who would have a result on the second quartile, which means below average for QMC, or even performing in the bottom 25%, just under our blue box, it's actually still achieving higher than the national average. And we're going to see a similar story in the next slide. Do you?
Yeah, so a similar pattern in this year's combined years 7 to 10 reading comprehension results, with less than 10% of the QMC students sitting in the below average bands in Stanines 1 through to 3, while 40% of our students sit in the above average Stanine band of Stanines 7 to 9. We've got 3 times the national average sitting at Stanine 9. So we have 12% of our students in Stanine 9 compared with 4% nationally. It's interesting to note that our international students sit these tests as well. So there are English as second language learners in this mix. And similarly to what we were discussing in the math results before, that shift upwards may make a student who nationally is well within the expected achievement level seem to be underperforming. When we look at the breakdown of the year levels, with the national results in the grey boxes again and QMCs in the green this time, we can see that the average band for the national average band for year 9 is sitting again at stay 9.5 and it's around 65 scale score. Whereas for QMC, we've got our average sitting in stay 9.6 and that's at 76. So there's a whole stay 9 difference in the average bands here. So this is where 50% of our students are in stay 9's 5 to 7 compared with the national average. What we'd like to do now is take a moment to show you what you see as parents and how this can help you to understand your own students' scores. So Trix is going to explain how you can locate your daughter's PAT results if you haven't already.
Yeah. So if you want to locate your personal results, you're going to have to be logged in the parents portal. So if you're not logged in, it's not going to give you access. If any of you has any access problem, the person to contact would be our data manager, Sharon Johnson. She will help you with any troubles accessing. But once you logged in, you will see this, and then this is where you want to go, student information. Once you go into there, it will give you access to this panel there and this bar that we've highlighted there, the results. You will be able to see the PATs in here, which is the ones that we've been talking about, and you will be able to access other ones as well. Because of course, PATs aren't the only results that you can see in the portal. You could see the MYP ones, for example, MYP, the middle year problems, so of the International Baccalaureate. And these results show students' grades gained throughout the year in different IB curriculum areas, for example, in English. Just as a note, this and the slide that we just showed you, these are real students. We just take, of course, all the personal information, but you will see a very similar bar graph if you look at your daughter's ones. It will just depend on how long she's been at QMC, the number of DARs that you have. So when we see here her results for English, we see that in 3 years in QMC, this student, it's showing great improvement in her MYP results for English, showing here in these curved lines. But we're talking about PAT, so we're going to go back to them.
So this same student, if we look at our next slide, when we look at her PAT results, she does appear to be falling behind or performing below the average. And we just saw that that's not actually the case with her MYP results. There are a number of factors for this. Remember that PATs are a snapshot of a specific moment in time and that they follow the New Zealand curriculum, which of course has overlaps with our IB program, but is not a perfect match. They don't test the same skills, really. So if we looked only at PATs and we didn't take into account other data we have for the student, her result for this year seems to be quite low until we compare it with the national average, which you can see with this grey box. Then we see that she's actually in a comfortable position within the middle 50%. Here's another student whose reading comprehension result for this year seems to be quite low. She's represented by the green dot down here, until we compare it with the national average. Looking further down the screen, we can see that there are some other results visible, and there's some consistency in these other PAT results. She's actually slightly above the national average for reading vocab, stay 9.6, and for maths, another stay 9.6. In cases where one area might be significantly or unexpectedly lower, this is something that would be flagged by the Learning Enrichment team for follow-up investigation, as we've earlier outlined. So, to recap, test results need to be interpreted in the context of other information and data. The Learning Enrichment team gathers and analyses information from a range of sources. We have PATs, we have entrance tests, e-ASTL, MYP grades, and so on. PAT results analysis is also done on a number of other levels by individual subject teachers, heads of curriculum learning areas, and our senior leadership team. High, low, inconsistent, or irregular results are flagged for further investigation. This will include reviewing previous reports, interviewing the student, and discussion with caregivers. We also conduct periodic subject sweeps, surveying information from, surveying feedback rather on specific students who have concerning results. The teacher observations of students can provide valuable insights that further inform our understanding of the students' strengths and needs. The teachers are the ones seeing the students' daily progression, so they're really valuable input when we are looking into these situations. The support or extension opportunities that we offer will be in consultation with the student, with her teachers, and with parents, and it will be based on a tiered support model. So in the centre here, we have core instruction, where differentiation and extension opportunities are embedded within the regular teaching program. Our teachers, having analysed the assessment results of their students, devise learning programs that are going to meet the needs, the extension needs and the support needs within the class. The strategic intervention or intensive support offered in learning enrichment is offered to students who have diagnosed specific learning difficulties, like dyslexia, for example. These difficulties significantly impact on their ability to work independently and at pace. So it's important to target these students. Support services are also offered to students who might not have been diagnosed with a learning difficulty, but they have been flagged for intervention based on their assessment results or other concerns that might have been raised. I would run these students through a series of screening tests and questionnaires that are designed to determine the likelihood of an underlying learning difficulty. And from these, I can determine what interventions might be appropriate. I can also determine whether or not I need to conduct a more comprehensive cognitive assessment and if referrals to outside agencies might be necessary. There's no one size fits all in learning enrichment. The types of intervention and supports offered depend upon individual student needs, but they're always strength-based, and our focus is on building self-esteem, resilience, and skills that students need to grow as independent learners. I have 2 tracks.
Yeah, and here, which is the part that I will look more closely, in the other end of the core instruction, we follow a similar approach when we are designing support for higher achieving students. And of course, again, it starts with the differentiation within each class as part of the core instructions. And then we move into strategic extension, eventually individual plans. And the options in strategic extension and for individual plans are going to look different from subject to subject. Generally, departments could have some overviewing strategy of what they can do in their core instructions, but after that, it may include some additional extension within the normal class, but still following the same topic. It could be that they are offer optional content that is not going to be tested, but it still challenges them. Or for one specific subject, maybe because it's a special area of strength for that student, or it's a special area of interest, and that passion is fueling that higher achievement. It may be acceleration, and when acceleration, it means doing that at a higher level than what the age would be doing. And with some of our students, after all of our testings and diagnosis, we may decide that the best option is a full grade skipping, so they can still feel challenged and achieving. Strategic extension, it's also provided outside the classroom. we are limited on time and space in class. And for students identified achieving well above that average, it may include optional clubs, competitions, activities, during lunchtime or after school. And there are opportunities for them to connect with like minds, it may be from different classes or even different year levels, and eventually apply those areas of strength. I think that's the last of our presentation.
Yeah, that does bring our presentation to a close, but we've got time now to answer your questions. So I see that there's a few that have come through, which we're just going to get up on our other computer.
Yeah, we've been asked if parents can see in the portal those national averages. Unfortunately, in the parents portal, you can see your daughter's results.
Yeah.
There is no way of doing those
That's-
overlaps.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are looking into that. We would like the system to be able to show that, but we're not, or the developers of the system
Yeah,
haven't given us that
I don't
yet.
think that's one of the options there.
Not yet.
Yeah, and we've got all the questions about clarification on stanines and how do students move the stanines. I think that one point that may be important is that because maybe if we go to fictional Maggie's ones, even if a student is flatlining, it's not moving stanines because the stanine moves with the age. They may be still doing progress, but
yeah,
maybe
that's exactly right. Yeah, so you'll see here that the stanine bands are moving up. I know this is really small to my eyes, but as where we've got a stanine 6, for example, here at year 7, a stanine 6 at year 8 sits just a bit higher. So Maggie here, while she's consistently in stanine 4, she has met the expected amount of progress with her scale score. It might not seem like a lot, but the scale, so the stanines shift up along the scale. So it's harder to get a stanine, harder to get the higher stanines up in the.
Yes, definitely. And that links back to, if we go to probably this one is the easier one to express, that the stanines, even if they are 1 to 9 and they look regular, scale scores are regular there, that doesn't mean that it's the easiest one or it equally easy to get to, as you just mentioned, these higher ones. So it's done, so even this scale looks linear, reaching those higher values is actually not a linear effort. There are the signs, so they give an idea of the average. Most of the people there, less and less common values, both very low and very high. And how could they be seen? That's the same. Yeah, we're still working on how could parents access the national average, as we as teachers have more access to more numbers. That's
an interesting thing, though. The average progress benchmark scores is actually something that is available to you. You can actually search them, but that's a good question. And I think if we were to look into that, we put that note that down for something that we can look into for future reference. So what else have we got here?
I think that we've got some questions about what about the average students, and I think that our average students are very well catered by our teachers. I think we're very lucky to have small classes and all classes within that core instruction. There's always differentiation within classes.
That's right, and that's something that we touched on a little bit in here, but the teaching approaches that are used in the classes are designed to meet the need of a range of abilities.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, same as when we look at the surveys, we look at the teacher's voice because they are seeing the students. same within the course instruction. They are seeing the students every day, so they know where within that core instruction they are, and they can adapt from day to day in ways that teachers can do with the experience. Yeah.
Just looking at another question in there. So PATs are conducted in term 1, and we put the results once we've got all of the students through the PATs. We run catch-ups for a couple of weeks afterwards.
Yes.
And once they're all through, then we upload the results. So the results should be available for parents to see, usually about week 6 or 7 of term 1. Okay. So I think that might be all we've got time for there. So thank you to everyone for joining us. We hope you have a better understanding of your daughter's PAT results, as well as how we interpret and use them here at QMC. If you have further burning questions that we haven't answered, please email these to enrichment@qmc.school.nz. Thanks. Ka kite.